Time once again for the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast with you as always, Jeff Chadiha. He's from the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the columnist for the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810. WHB. Is the playoff dream done? Is the dynasty over? We'll talk about it. Certainly doesn't look good right now for the Kansas City Chiefs. How about going forward on fourth down? Sam wrote an extensive piece on that. Just about some of the numbers that were in play. We'll talk about the fourth down decisions of Andy Reid. Did the offensive line do enough? Is this team asking too much of Patrick Mahomes? Did the Chiefs defense do what it needed to do to win this game? What about playing without Trent McDuffie? Can they win long-term without him? What do all the drops tell you about the weapons around Patrick Mahomes? We're discussing it all right now on Gold and Bold.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Off and running. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation. Got a lot of folks in the chat room tonight. We stream live Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m. Central, so you can join Terry and Brad and what do we got? Pat. A lot of the folks in here already commenting up about the Kansas City Chiefs. Guys, let's start with this. The playoffs. Are they done? Are they cooked? Is that it? It's over mathematically. They're still alive. There's still a path. There are even some wonderful fans of the Kansas City Chiefs that think it's actually still likely that the Chiefs are going to get there. How about you, Jeff? Is it over?
Where are those fans at, and what are they putting in their coffee? Because I don't see a path. I mean, I see math, but I think once you get to that point where you're talking about all these elaborate scenarios, it's never good for any team, and that's where they are. I mean, I felt like when they lost to the Texans, the way they lost, I wasn't at the game, but from what I heard about the locker room experience, it was a very draining thing for them to drop that game. And I just don't see where a team that's had this kind of relentless inconsistency is all of a sudden going to pull out 4 straight victories, which is the first thing they have to have for any playoff scenario to work out in their favor. The Chargers winning last night was a big blow to them because they need just one more game now to win to get to I think to solidify their positioning. And I don't see the Bills dropping out. The Texans, I don't think they're going to drop out of this. And so I just don't see where the Chiefs at 6-7 are going to make some great run to get back into this thing.
Sam, where do you sit? Is it done?
Yeah, I think there's 2 pieces of this. First is the math piece of it, and the other is the emotional piece of it. I think, you take the math piece of it first. I would say there's somewhere between 5 and 10%. But there's a real wrinkle here, which is the Chargers need to lose 2 more games, but a very specific one in the Broncos, who could very well be resting their starters in Week 18. And I think people look at it.
And real quick, they need to lose 3 more if you count the one the Chiefs have to beat them. So outside of the Chiefs, they have to lose 2 more.
Yes. Chiefs have to beat them next week. Chiefs have to win out, and the Chargers have to lose 2 of their final 3. And there's a lot of problems with that. One is that the Broncos might be resting their starters, and people look at it and say, well, they might not get the 1 seed locked up. They could have the 2 seed locked up too, though. Just straight 2, can't get to 1, can't get to 3, because 3 is 2 games behind them right now. So I think it's a better than coin flips chance that the Broncos are not playing their starters in a game that the Chiefs need the Broncos to win. So like that's part of the math. Jeff mentioned it, but like any scenario involves the Chiefs winning 4 games in a row, and it's a team that has not given us any confidence they're going to win 4 games. I said last week when we went through this, why are the Chiefs going to win 5 games in a row? And then I said, why are the Chiefs going to beat the Texans? Because that's always the assumption is that, okay, well, the Chiefs win their 4, and here's what else has. Well, why are we assuming this part of it? And I do think the emotional part of it is going to be a very important piece too, which is I was in that locker room after the game, and I'm telling you guys, it is the most depressing locker room I've ever walked into in 15 years of covering professional sports. I've been in World Series losing locker rooms after Game 7 with the Royals and Giants. I've been in Super Bowl losing locker rooms with this specific team. A lot of those same guys. I've never been in a locker room like I walked into after the Chiefs lost to the Texans on Sunday. You had 10 to 15 guys who were still in full uniform, like a high school team that like didn't want their last game to be over, and it wasn't going to feel over until they took their uniform and pads off. One of those guys was Travis Kelce, who was almost motionless, sitting at his locker. When we walked in, by the time the media was gone, he was still sitting at his locker, full pads, hands on his head, just staring down at the ground, not talking to anybody. And you couldn't help but wonder if he's thinking, is this it? And then you look across the room from him, and Patrick Mahomes has a towel over his head, intentionally covering his face. I've never seen him have a towel over his head in the locker room. And, I phrased this in my post-game column. It was the imagery of that was, to me, the best player in the world hiding from view. That's what this team has done all year. It's the best team going into the year hiding from view in the game's biggest moments. And so I think the math is one piece, but I didn't see a locker room that thought that they had a chance still. And I think it's entirely fair to wonder how much fire this team's going to show over the last month of the season based on what I saw in that locker room.
Yeah, we've talked about it, Jeff, that, I felt like even after the Cowboy game, Andy Reid sounded resigned to just putting up a good fight in some games, right? Like I thought that was his tone and tenor, which is kind of shocking because that's, supposedly where you've always got a chance, right? Like, mathematically you got to do it. And he was almost, Sam on the Zoom on Monday, we heard him, he was given the opportunity, like, well, do you tell the story of your Eagles team that had a bunch of things happen? And what do you say to the guys? How do you keep things light? And he seemed to want no part of that, right? Just like, hey, anything can happen. But once Jeff, you get to this point, like that's it, right? Like I think Sam made a good point. There's the math. There's also the emotion. Emotionally, done, cooked. It is over because they know when they look in the mirror, they don't see a team that's good enough to do it.
Yeah, and I say all the time that the players know, coaches know. I mean, there is nothing in that locker room when this whole stretch started of them having to win must-win games that, if you're in Dallas, all of a sudden you make a trade for Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson, maybe you got some new juice going and you think, okay, we can get this thing going now. Or, the Colts made that move for Sauce Gardner. You get some guys back healthy. Some teams have that happen. This team was pretty much riding with what they've always hoped to have. Everybody that you wanted to have available was there. And they were still losing games. And so after a certain point, they've had 5 straight must-win games here. Whether that's a must-win game to get your season turned around or to stay in the AFC West or to stay in playoff contention, like all these games sap you emotionally. And at some point, if you keep losing those games, you're going to start saying, well, I guess we're not good enough. and this is uncharted territory for all of these guys because no one on this roster has ever been in a position where they've had to wonder, what do we do now? And I think the great takeaway for this whole season at this stage is that there are no more guarantees for this team. There are no more guarantees of Super Bowls or AFC championship games or even AFC West division titles. You're like everybody else in the world now. You're out there fighting to prove that you're worthy.
It was a situation to me over these last 5 weeks when you look at it. I argued like crazy this was a good football team, that the record didn't show it. They have not played like a good football team for the last 5 weeks. That team in Buffalo did not play well. In Denver, the offense did not play well. Against the Colts for a half, they played terribly in the first half. And then this week against the Cowboys, the defense was atrocious. And then this week, they did not play. They had one good unit on the field for a half, which is their defense was good for a half. They they have transformed from a team that played above its record to a team that looks like it deserves its record. And previously I was saying that about their inability to operate in clutch moments. It's full games now. Like, they've gotten worse as the season has progressed. And that has not been the way this team has performed in the past 6-7 years.
And why? What do you attribute it to?
I think the entire season, when you look at it, falls into the same category within games and from week to week, to where they have just not risen to the moment. They can say, I asked Andy Reid about this and Patrick Mahomes about this after the game about, do you still have that belief when the game's on the line? They can say they do. It looks like a team that does not know how to win, the team that's still trying to learn how to close out games. And then it just looks like a team that does not believe in itself. I mean, Jeff's phrase that he mentioned, he says all the time. I mean, players know and coaches know. It looks like a group of players that does not expect things to go their way. And I think the last 2 years has provided this fool's gold to them that you can fiddle around for 3 quarters and then figure it out when the game's on the line. What happens when you don't figure it out when the game's on the line? Suddenly a kick off the uprights matters. Suddenly drops in the first half matter that get glossed over whenever you win the game. It's why the three of us, when they were 15-2 last year, frequently talked about those mistakes and said at some point it's not going to work out at the end of games. I guess, in the Super Bowl that was right, but it turns out it was more prophetic to this year because they've operated for 3 quarters the same way they did a year ago, even better in most metrics. When you don't figure it out in the fourth quarter, those little things really, really matter in the way you play the rest of the game.
Yeah. Jeff, why can they look for moments, maybe even a game or two, the Lions game, a half against the Commanders, a half against the Colts? Why do we see the team that we go, okay, there it is, they found it. Why can they not sustain it for more than that? Is it age? Is this like, hey, I'm not as good as I once was, or I'm not what I once was, but I'm as good as I ever was for 2 minutes? Is it that old phrase that there is a champion, but some of the key components just are spent, whether that's age or just the fatigue of going deep into season after season after season?
I think it's a lot of factors. I mean, this league is always fluid, and it's always evolving. It's always changing. And Sam's right. There was a fool's gold in the last couple of years of thinking that this team has some magic gift of knowing how to win that other teams don't have. When a lot of times they were getting some breaks that other teams weren't getting, or they were making breaks that other teams weren't making for themselves. And now you're seeing that start to balance out. They weren't the best team last year. That was Philadelphia Eagles. They weren't the best team 2 years ago when they won it all. That was the Ravens, and the Niners were a better team, but they found ways to win. But I think what happened in those seasons, if you look back at it, there were big things happening that allowed them to focus on those things as opposed to things that are happening now. It was, these guys are dropping passes. They only catch the passes. If Kadarius Toney and Marquez Valdez-Scantling do what they're supposed to do, things will be better. If we get the offense going in the right direction, things will be better. All these guys got banged up last year. Pacheco and Rice and all these guys got hurt. If they got healthy, they'd be back. Fix left tackle. That's going to fix it. And all the other things were happening behind the scenes that were big problems too. And when they got Josh Simmons, we had these conversations. We would say left tackle's not the only problem with this team back in training camp because the defensive line stunk and the running back stunk, and they were willing to go down this path. But this is the curse of success. This is believing that whatever you do, it's going to work out. When in fact, you're always getting older. You're always losing key pieces, and you're always getting caught up by people who are scheming against you and planning against you. And this is where they're at now. It's just the reality of the NFL.
Can I? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I'll offer one more theory to this, which is, to me, this team it's lacked concentration and focus, for consistent concentration and consistent focus. And I think there's one plausible reason for that. You mentioned Soren playing into January and February and playing extra games and fatigue. I think there's some mental fatigue associated with that, because you win the Super Bowl in 23 because you didn't win it the year before, right? It's easy to be motivated going into 23. I think in 24, you catch the break that no team had repeated in 20 years. I think if another team had repeated in 5 years, you might not have had the same carrot to dangle in front of your players. Let's be the first team to repeat as champions in 20 years.
Yeah.
Last year, it's incredibly easy, right? In 24, which is, and I got those years back, it's 22, 23, 24. But in 24, you're the first ever team to three-peat. Like that is and they also, and I talked about this a lot last year, when you won your first 5-6 games last year, then you had the undefeated thing too. You don't want to lose. You want to keep an undefeated record. You're the last team unbeaten. Like that provides this intrinsic motivation. And now this year you come off of losing. What is it? Is it to prove that you were good enough last year but didn't quite do it? It wasn't obvious. I'll say that, beyond just, hey, every team wants to win a Super Bowl, right? But you didn't have that obvious carrot to dangle. And I think going into the season, it was week 1 that the head coach of this team was talking about a lack of effort in Brazil. Week 1.
Yes.
And I think I'm not saying they've had a lack of effort all year, but I do think they've been without the full concentration, without the full focus, and that's potentially one plausible reason.
I think a number of things. You mentioned, covering a lot of different stuff. I remember being in spring training 2016. The Kansas City Royals are coming off a World Series, coming off back-to-back World Series appearances and a World Championship. And I remember asking Ned Yost, like, how do you motivate this team? Like, I get it. In 13, the franchise had never won. You finally win, but they'd never been to the playoffs. But they came back and had a bit of a hangover in 14 and were below 500 after the All-Star break. But then it's like, no. We got to make the playoffs. That's what we got to do. They take off. They get to the playoffs. They ride that momentum all the way to the World Series and into a 7th game. Then it's like, God, we were that close. We could do it. They fight. They get the number 1 seed in the American League in 15. They ride that momentum, barely getting by the Houston Astros, right, and getting into the World Series. Once they get by the Astros, then they roll and they win the World Series. And I said to him, I'm like, well, what's the motivation now? He said, to go to a 3rd straight World Series. Only a handful of teams have done it. And I'm like, you don't even buy that. Like, that is like, it's like the best you could come up with on, hey guys, let's but they almost had done the back. And I was like, and that 16 team never did really get going. And I think you laid it out. I think 2 things we need to remember. One, when it is your year, as Jeff has pointed out, because I think it's been Baltimore's year a couple of times, you don't always win it. I think it was the Chiefs' year, maybe in 18, even with the defense sucking. They were new and fresh and hungry, and that offense was lights out. And as we know, D Ford, if he doesn't jump off sides, maybe they get there. A lot of us think they'd beat the Rams, whatever. But then they're motivated to come back and prove that in 19 they get it done. But even have some trials and tribulations along the way. That year, they faced down the fear of, oh, my God, the quarterback's hurt. We have to play without him. That makes it even more like, hey, we've got to be motivated and go. 20, I think they still were fired up, and I think they were the team. They just didn't win it. Right? In a lot of ways, in 19, they stole the Ravens Super Bowl, to quote our buddy Eric Eager, who used to lay it out this way. 20, it was theirs, and the Bucs stole it because they were healthier at the end and they got it. And all the scenarios you laid out about the motivation, I think are right. The chat room is filled with people, like Dan saying, this is a personnel problem. It's always a personnel problem because no team drafts perfectly. Injuries happen, and when you pay a quarterback and other star players, your depth is never what you want. So is it a personnel problem? Yes, it's always a personnel problem. No one has enough personnel. But this team, this is the point we're talking about here, is they show those glimpses of where they can still be that special team for a half defensively, dominating the Colts, dominating the Texans defensively for moments, or the offense can catch fire and roll against the Commanders or roll against the Lions. But they can't do it consistently because there just isn't that burning fire to push through the pain, the fatigue, the lack of focus. I mean, the drops are clearly a lack of focus. These are guys, Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce in particular, that have been there and done it at the highest level. And they're doing things that you don't do. It is more than just personnel. I'm sorry. It is hard to win a championship. They've just made it look so easy that now people want to just say, well, it's a drafting problem. It's not. And I think that begs the question, Jeff, and let's take a break because I don't want to get too far behind. I think it begs the question overall, and we'll tackle this when we come back. Is the dynasty over? Is that what we're watching? Is it the end, or can it just simply be jump-started? We'll start there after you hear from our friends at GAN. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let GAN educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot.
This episode of Red, Gold, and Bold is brought to you by Frontier Justice, where freedom is a lifestyle grounded in safety, responsibility, and respect. With locations in Lee Summit, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, and Jenks, Oklahoma, Frontier Justice offers firearms retail, a premier indoor shooting range, and training all under one roof. Whether you're new to shooting or a seasoned pro, you'll find expert staff, top-tier gear, and a strong sense of community. Faith, family, freedom. That's what Frontier Justice stands for. Visit frontier-justice.com to learn more.
All right, how about it? All these things we're talking about, Jeff, is this simply a sign that it's over and they need a complete reset, or it's watching the postseason, watching everybody else play, recharging your batteries, getting a little extra time off, getting more time to start preparing whatever next year's offense is going to be, more time to start preparing for the opponents, more time to dive into the draft? Is that the exact reset that basically this core unit needs, and they'll be back next year? What do you see, Jeff?
Well, there's no guarantee they're going to be back. First of all, yeah, this version of their dynasty is over. They may create another dynasty down the road like New England did, which I always say New England is two separate dynasties. The same guys who were there at the beginning, the Willie McGinnis and the Teddy Bruschi's and Ty Laws weren't there when they were winning 2014, 2016, 2018. But yeah, they have to do a lot of soul searching. Personnel is part of the problem. It's going to take a while to fix some of these things. But I also feel like you got to start with Andy. And what does he want? Because so much of what they've been doing has been built around, I think, his age, his where he's at in his coaching career. How much can they win, to enhance his legacy? And does he want to be here 5 years from now? Because that affects how you're going to draft and how you're going to manage your salary cap. It's going to affect the offense you run. Does he want to bring in new voices to talk about, different ideas and concepts that are out there that other people are using? I think that's a huge place to start, because I'm not certain what the answers are to those right now. But yeah, you have to look at the players you're holding on to. There's no reason to have the Charles Omenihu's around anymore, the Juju Smith-Schusters, the Derek Notties, these people who've been part of your regime for a long time. To borrow something from the New England success they had, one real big factor in why they were able to keep winning, mental fatigue is real. I do agree with that, but they got rid of a lot of guys. And the guys who came in were hungry, and they knew if they screwed up, they were going to be gone fast. So there was always that understanding of, if you're here, you better be working and getting it done, because you won't be here long. And so accountability's got to be a big part of that, because these penalties, these turnovers, a lot of that is Andy's love you up, never call you out mentality towards players that I think hurts these guys in times like this.
Yeah. I think your point about the Patriots is a good one. I think you'd almost break it into three. There are 3 championships. There are 2 misses against the Giants, 7-11, and then there's kind of a new wave, because that had kind of like the Randy Moss. It kind of reset, and they were an offensive-based team, and then they kind of reset again as the defense and grinded out on offense, and they went to 4 more Super Bowls, winning 3 of them. And Sam, listen, I think it is the elephant in the room that the organization is going to have to talk about is, are we watching? I said this earlier in the week. Andy Reid and everybody in this organization has earned the right to be here a year too long, right? If what has to happen, if they're going to come back and they're going to say all the right things, and then they're going to turn around and go 5-12, and then they're going to go like, okay, guys, we need to tell. They've earned the right to do that. Like I agree. Yeah. I don't think you want to fire Andy Reid and then wonder, could we have kept it going when the next guy comes in? So he's going to get. So the idea of, and same thing with Brett Veach and all of them, they have had so much success and done so many things right. You're not firing anybody at the end of this year, okay? And nor should you. But let's wonder aloud, if you were a lieutenant for Andy Reid or Brett Veach or Clark Hunt, is this what it looked like the year before Andy Reid bottomed out with the Eagles? Is this the team needs a new voice? As he said when he came to Kansas City, the Eagles needed a new voice. He needed a new team. Have we reached that point here in Kansas City? And is that where it begins? Or is it at least, okay, the voice can stay the same, but you better change a lot of components on the team so there are fresh ears listening to what it is Andy Reid has to say?
I think on that piece of it, they are a year behind because the best teams and the way even this team operated at its peak was even when you're winning, you should be looking to tweak. And the personnel is the most glaring example of the way they didn't. Stren, you mentioned talking to Ned Yost after the Royals won the World Series. I covered Sporting Kansas City when it won in 2013. And, I didn't know much about soccer at all, but I started covering them a couple months before they won. I remember saying something to Peter Vermees after they won and saying, "Hey, you got this group back next year too." And he said, "Sam, that's not the ideal way you want to have it. You've got to have some guys who haven't won be part of the group." This team didn't have that. This team doesn't have that. It has guys who have won and are used to winning. And that goes to Jeff's point about the hunger that the Patriots have. You talk about the dynasty. I already think this team's in phase 2. I think once they traded Tyreek Hill, they shifted to a new phase and they played differently. They drafted defense almost exclusively in that draft. I mean, I think they moved into it, but there's going to be no more definitive line than when the Hall of Fame tight end retires, than when the head coach retires. And the Patriots didn't have that, by the way. I mean, Tom Brady changed up his favorite target throughout that dynasty. This team has operated, even now with him being 36 years old, he's still the leading receiver on this team. And they've had the same head coach at some point. I told you guys, I asked Andy Reid at the owners meeting, can you envision any scenario in which you coach Patrick for the rest of his career? And he goes, that'd be a long time. I don't think I know he doesn't anticipate that. And yeah, I think it's fair to wonder how much longer he has left. And Jeff's right. And how does that affect things? To your very question, Soren, of course you need to evaluate your scheme. Of course you need to evaluate, why your offense has become worse as this season has progressed over these last 5 weeks compared to what it was the previous 5 weeks. Like that, those questions need to be asked, but how does that answer change if Andy says, I've got 1 more year or I've got 2 more years? Do you go through that sort of overhaul if that's the case?
Yeah. It'll take a lot for Andy Reid to say, this is the time for me to step away, right? Like, I mean, let me ask you this. Whenever it is over, Jeff, does it end with a transition, where you're not far from it, or does it have to crash and burn to do it? What I mean, you've covered a lot of football teams. What will the end look like?
It never crashes and burns when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. I'll be honest with you. I think it would look a lot like what New Orleans has become. What New Orleans became when Drew Brees was. They had that big draft in 2016, I think it was, and they had all that talent for a while. And they just couldn't get over the hump, and they had that tough loss in the NFC Championship game. Sean Payton reinvented his offense with more of a, Alvin Kamara dual threat running back or 2 running back system. At its best, I think that's what it could look like, where you go through a lull and then you come back up. But I think Spagnuolo's a part of this too, because he's an older coach and he may have done what he wants to do and may think, once you start, look, it's a very real possibility they end up 8-9. That's on the table for this team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so you start having those kinds of seasons, everybody starts thinking about what the future looks like for them, because next year becomes really, really hard for you. And so when you lose the Chris Joneses, you lose the Travis Kelce's, what's that roster going to look like? And how much these coaches want to keep going through this kind of a process. So it's crashing and burning is extreme, because I think Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, Drew Brees in New Orleans, Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh, it's, those quarterbacks, Rodgers is at the level Mahomes is at, but you're always going to be winning double-digit games or in playoff contention. But to win championships, you got to have some really big things happen for you.
Let's talk about the 4th downs, Sam. You had great numbers in your column today about, basically Kareem Hunt has been involved in every one of their 4th down successes, whether it's giving him the ball, throwing him the ball, or at least play faking him the ball. And here on what was the boldest 4th down that he's mustered all year.
In his career, I think, yeah.
From the 31, he doesn't even involve the most important player. Like,
yeah,
that's trying to, game the game. You got caught in your own minutia there.
Yeah, just overthinking it. I mean, I think there's been so much attention on the decision, which look, I get. I mean, I am as aggressive as anybody, and I probably would have punted the ball. I don't hate that decision the way most people do. I still probably would punt. Your defense had given up 17 yards in the previous 5 possessions. And if you say you're going to trust your defense, like you had a pretty good reason to trust your defense. But the play call is just, I think that's so much more black and white as far as like, I don't understand how you arrive at not involving Kareem Hunt. I'll say the numbers exactly. I mean, on 4th and 1 exactly, they've gone for it 16 times this year, a really high number for Andy Reid. They've converted 13 of them, which is why Andy Reid said on the Zoom call Monday, we've been really good on 4th down. Well, the reason is because you put Kareem Hunt in the play. So when Kareem Hunt gets the carry, a rush, he's 10 for 11 this year on 4th and 1. They've also thrown it to him once and converted. 11 of 12 when he touches the ball. On the other 4, 2 of those other 4, they faked it to him, like they did against a week earlier on Thanksgiving against the Cowboys when Jared Wiley's wide open. If you watch the play, the reason he's wide open is they play fake to Kareem Hunt. All 3 linebackers crash towards the line of scrimmage because they're like, we know that guy's getting the ball. Well, you fake to him. So 2 for 2 and they fake to him. So when they involve Kareem Hunt in the play, either by giving him the ball or faking to him, they're 13 out of 14 converting 4th and 1. Twice this year, he's not been in the backfield. Both times the play has failed. With a drop back pass, nobody open. What do I do now from the quarterback who ends up throwing into coverage? And it fails. So I understand they probably thought, hey, we've used Kareem Hunt on short yardage 3 times this game. Can't go there again. To which I'd counter 2 things. The first thing is teams know Kareem Hunt's getting the ball anyway. It's still working. And the second thing is if the whole reason, this is what I said in your show today, Soren, is the whole reason for not giving it to him is teams expect it. Make them expect it.
Yes.
Don't take him out of the play completely and line him up at tight end.
Yeah.
The way I viewed that play, and people talk about Andy Reid being more feel when it comes to 4th down and more gut. I think Andy's like maybe his curse and his blessing. I think he's really thoughtful and he's really affected by what he sees. And I think what he saw earlier in that game on the 4th and 1 with Kareem Hunt, when they scored, was Kareem Hunt had to do a lot to get in the end zone on that play. Remember, Danielle Hunter blew the play up.
Yes, and happens a lot on these 4th and 1 plays. Actually.
Yeah, and so, but I think in that moment, and I also think that I don't think Andy Reid just in that moment thought I'm going to do this. I think he thought about that all week. I think he thought I'm going to be more aggressive. I'm going to have something in mind, and I'll be ready for this moment when it comes.
Well,
that's what I think.
Jeff, yeah, we talked about to your point. I mean, he seems to react to whatever didn't work last week.
Yeah,
there is not a
100%.
guiding. This
100%.
is Sam's process over results. Mm-hmm. There is not a guiding like in Detroit. He has bought in. Dan Campbell has bought into the 4th down numbers to some degree. He has a mark. He has a line. They prepare all week. We're going for it. And these moments.
And bought into the failure, sir. And he's bought into the failure as part of this.
Accepting that the failure will happen, but when we succeed, we will succeed more than we fail. And overall, the sum gain is worth it. And so there is no thought. There is no hesitation. There is no emotion in it. I think there's emotion in Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid has sensed that the team doesn't have it, whatever it is, talent, emotion, focus, all those things. And he's trying to give it to him. And so he's looking for that time that he can get the spark instead of being guided. I'm going to be honest with you. He's just old on this. He is behind the times, and he is not, when he says feel, he's got those numbers. Listen, Tito Francona, the old Red Sox and Guardians. Where is he now? The Reds manager.
Reds, yeah.
Great guy to talk to. And I remember talking to him about analytics. They have a little deal at spring training where they bring all the managers and GMs together. And the first time they had it, I was like, hey, yeah, analytics, and you get it. You've been on the forefront of that. He goes, yeah, we're on the forefront of it, but there's only so far you can go. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Give me an example. He said, well, when I was in Boston, all the analytics guys bring me down the optimum lineup. And, there are games where they're like, okay. And I look at it and I pick it up and it has David Ortiz batting ninth. And he said, I picked it up and I handed it to the guy. And I said, you go into that clubhouse and you tell everyone Big Poppy's batting ninth, right? It was great. We all chuckle like, okay, so we use the analytics, but we don't go all the way there. But now we will. Now he will bat ninth. Now a fat ass will lead off. Rizzo with the Yankees, like baseball.
Kyle Schwarber, yeah.
Kyle Schwarber batting leadoff. Baseball initially, and even Francona, okay, we got the numbers, but we can only go this far because we got to get all the players to buy in. Well, Andy Reid hasn't bought in. So he's a little bit, so it's okay to go for it on fourth down. Okay, so I've got a little cover here, but I'm not going all the way to it. And so he just reacts on emotion, Jeff. And I think he doesn't call plays on emotion. Like he doesn't call plays like Marty Schottenheimer. We're just going to run it down their throat. That was old school Cro-Magnon football. We're just going to keep punching them in the face until they finally fall down. He's always been beyond that, but he's not beyond that on the fourth down.
Yeah, well, I also think, Blake, I always stand on this. I always take this stance when it comes to fourth down, which is, I think sometimes the analytics community looks at it like it's every fourth down is the same. They're all created equal. So what you do doesn't matter. The math tells you what you should do. And it's not true in real life. I mean, you have different variables at play. And so I think if you're Andy Reid, and I'll defend him on this, you're out there with three starting offensive linemen out, and your backup left tackle goes down in the first play. So you got a guy in Esapole, who you're trying to figure out what can we do with this dude.
I agree with you 100%.
I get that part of it.
I agree with you 100% of it. But where's the fourth down where that has been the issue for Andy? Like,
there's other factors. Yeah.
No, there's other factors. But I'm like, is there a fourth down that you can point to on Andy Reid? Like the two games that are fresh in our mind are the Cowboys and the Texans, and he was polar opposite in how he did it.
Yeah.
He was in more of a higher scoring game, and he went conservative against the Cowboys when his defense wasn't stopping anybody. Then his defense is stopping people, and he goes aggressive late against the Texans. Like, where's the time where you went like, I think he'd go for it, but and it might be there. Like I thought he should have gone for it at the beginning of the second quarter when they got the running into the kicker, and he could have had 4th and 5 at the Texans 44. Right. Instead, he stayed with the punt where they had it down at the 10. Yeah. I thought that was a missed opportunity. And had he gone for it there and then gone for it later, it would make more sense to me.
Yeah.
It would be like, I have a mission. I believe that we have an advantage. If you don't go for it, I believe it could very well be, well, my offensive line is banged up. I can't trust him. I've got to play defense. But then you didn't do that later. I don't get it.
Well, that 4th and 5, I understand that a little more because the way that sequence, I remember playing out, they had a big sack. Caliano got beat really bad, and they were at like 3rd and 17, right?
No, they were 3rd and 10.
2nd and 17, and then
yeah.
they went to they threw the ball to Rice for a 7-yard gain. As they wound up in a 4th and 10. They ended up punting, right? They brought Rice out the punt, and then he got roughed, and then it was 4th and 5, right? I understand that if you already got your offense on the sideline, they're talking to each other. Now you got to get them back up on the field, get your play call. I get that part of it.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, that happened actually, if you remember, in the Broncos game with Sean Payton. They had a 4th and 4 late, and he was dicking around trying to figure out what to call, and they ended up getting a delay of game penalty and went to 4th and 9. And Romo said, this is what happens. And Payton was pissed on the sideline because he's like, get the guys up going, get the personnel ready so we can go into play. Yeah. So those things happen during the course of the game. So I don't fault him for that one. But, the 4th and 1, I completely believe that in his mind, he was thinking there will be a scenario where I have to be super aggressive, go against my nature, and this is what I'm gonna run.
Because to Soren's point, because of last week, which is why, like, you cannot find on the same sheet of paper punt last week on 4th and 4 from plus territory in an offensive game and go for it on your own 31 on 4th and 1 in the fourth quarter when your defense is allowed 17 yards and 5 possessions. Those don't wind up on the same sheet of paper in any other locker room. And that's what's so confounding about this. I mean, I didn't think the Texans were going to get back into Chiefs territory.
No.
Like, I didn't think that the way I phrased it in the column is the Texans don't drive into Chiefs territory unless the Chiefs park their car there and say, here are the keys. Now you're in our territory. Mm-hmm. And that's why if Andy Reid does these things on feel, and it's like that was the one time where maybe feel was most on his side to be conservative. I will say just one more quick thing about that, two more actually really quick things about this. Andy Reid said he would do this again. That stunned me, not because I disagree with that, but because that implies that he is considering the process over the result, which I've not heard him do. And so I'm going to commend him for actually saying I would stick with the process, even though it didn't work. The other thing is there's one thing that makes this whole conversation irrelevant. if the kicker makes the field goal in the first half. You are
Yeah.
not punting when you're not going for it when you're up 3 points with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter if your field goal kicker doesn't doink a kick off the uprights in the first half.
Yeah.
Which his whole trials and tribulations are yet another example of a guy who has been a money championship player that cannot get it together this year.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, like they're just exhausted or they're trying to create motive, whatever it is. He wanted to get better. He tinkered with his motion and now he's lost. Like it's just another example of a team that just can't catch the rhythm.
It's hard for your field goal kicker to be a microcosm of your season, but it is.
Yeah, it is. It is, no doubt. O-line, though, the ray of positivity there with what we saw from Esapole. Jeff, what do you make of only allowing 2 sacks? Doing it with a tackle that didn't practice with the ones getting thrown in there. Like, what do you take away from what we saw from the offensive line?
I thought it was a great showing by them. I mean, I thought they really had a good plan in place. It didn't equate to a lot of points, but that was always going to be the trade-off. You were always going to have to err on the side of trying to make sure Mahomes didn't get hit a lot in this game in order to have a chance of winning it. And it was funny watching some of the plays with Hunter and Anderson coming off the edge, because you could tell they were like, okay, where's the chip coming from? Who's going to hit me in my ribs this time? Or like, they had so many different ways of helping out with those guys, Pole and who was the other guy, Jalen Moore, that it was effective. And, but I still felt like as if Mahomes didn't trust it completely, because it felt like when he was having to throw, he was really, pushing the ball forward, jumping out, moving when he'd have to move. You could tell he was not comfortable behind that offensive line, even though they were doing their part. And so I think I like what I saw up front. The quarterback, not so much.
Yeah.
Well, it evoked one question for me, which is like, is this offensive line coaching staff that bad at grading their own talent? Because Esapole gave a better one-game performance than we've ever seen Wanya Morris play.
Yes.
It's why I put him on the initial 53-man roster over Wanya Morris. But like, how can he not make the 53-man roster over Wanya Morris? And then once you've got him back, how could he have not started over him? And I don't think that game was perfect for Esapole. He might have just played his best game of the season. He might not be as good at that, but that is a better performance than we've ever seen Wanya Morris have. But there's another piece of that, which is Jalen Moore played on the right side. He's struggled twice this season. He's played pretty well 4 times. Both times he struggled, he's been on the right side. And so this thing that, hey, Wanya is more comfortable on the left side. And like I said before the game, I understand not wanting to put Wanya Morris next to Mike Caliendo in the game, but it's pretty clear that Jalen Moore is better on the left side. And so there's 2 pieces of the way their offensive line played that I thought, you guys didn't evaluate this correctly. You didn't put the right guys out there, or you didn't put them in the right spot.
I think the Esapole, there has to be like somebody's ass is on the line for who green-lighted. I know what they thought. They were hoping that they could slide him to the practice squad. That's what they thought. But you can't make mistakes like that, right? This is an important one. And I don't think that anybody would come up with the reason that, like, no, we're doing this for purely football reasons. You did it because Wanya Morris was a draft pick and you want to salvage how that looks. I mean, I don't know how you can come to any conclusion other than we wanted to give our draft pick one more shot. And keeping the 7th rounder or keeping an undrafted guy makes us look bad. I that's the why else the instant returns are that he is definitively a better football player than Wanya Morris, and I really do. I think somebody's going to should be in some hot water for whoever it was that pushed that. It was Andy Heck. You're done. We'll tell you who to coach. You're out of that saying. If it was Brett Veach, Andy needs to say back off. I'll pick the offensive lineman for now. If it was Andy, it needs to be Andy. Go find some creative plays. We got whoever pushed for that move needs to be taken out of that equation.
Doesn't it fit into the same bucket of what we talked about with the roster being stale? It's a prioritization of familiarity. Yeah. And Wanya Morris had been there for 2 years, and all these other veterans, he's familiar with the system. I think they need to get more comfortable with the unfamiliar.
We had a caller who said it's easier to just re-sign Charles Omenihu than it is to go find somebody better. Or you've swung and missed trying to find people better, and you just, you're afraid of what you might find when you're out there. I think we'll see a big difference on that. I actually can't wait for our off-season shows to start talking about what they need to do with the roster.
Well, they're gonna come earlier, I think.
Yeah, it's starting on Christmas.
Say we got 5 more weeks of off-season shows. Listen, too much for Mahomes? They put too much on him? Is it just as simple as that, Jeff?
I don't think it's as simple as that, but it's worth having that conversation now because it feels like he's a man out there without a whole lot around him. And I've long believed that no matter who your quarterback is, if you put enough bullshit around him, like they're going to struggle. The team's going to struggle. And for this team to have a potentially losing season with a Mahomes healthy all year long is unfathomable. It is. There was no way you would ever hear me say that sentence. And it's a real thing. And so that, again, it's time to start thinking about, do you do what Buffalo has done with Josh Allen and find, a more constructive running game? Do you find a Derrick Henry type guy that they did with Lamar Jackson? Do you invest in more dynamic receivers like they've done for Joe Burrow? What they've done, Matthew Stafford. I mean, whatever it has to be done, something has to happen, because we're past the point of, hey, Pat will go out there and make it happen, and we'll all be great in the end. That theory, that mindset's got to change.
I'm a huge believer. I mean, listen, they had an ass defense in 2018, and if one guy lines up on side, they play for a championship, right? And I know they did what they had to do in, what was it, the 2022 draft. And it played out that defense was there, and they kept after defense, and they did a great job. It was a great job because that's how the board fell. It's not, build the Steeler defense, build the Raven defense of 2000. They have got to get this offense fixed, and that starts with personnel. And I think that's the takeaway, because I don't think there's any way, Sam, that at 30 years old, Patrick Mahomes is suddenly a mediocre quarterback. They have deflated what's around him to the point, and you just can't win consistently in the NFL like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked quite a bit this season about the fact that it's harder to play quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs than it is the Buffalo Bills right now. And most of that is because the Bills have a great running game. Teams play the run against the Bills. Teams play the run against the Bills more frequently than like all but 5 teams in the league. Teams play the pass against the Chiefs more frequently than any team in the league. Like, it's harder to play quarterback for this team. For this one specific game, when you look at whether or not they're asking Mahomes to do too much, I actually didn't think they asked him to do enough in the first half of the game. It took them a long time to realize that their offensive line was holding up pretty well in the game. It took Patrick Mahomes a long time to realize that the offensive line was holding up pretty well. And their game plan, which, like, I am not at all criticizing them for adjusting their game plan to face that defense, because they should have. All 3 of us sat here on Friday and say, you're going to have to throw quick. You can't throw the ball downfield. You're not going to have to. They did end up having time. And it wasn't until the 5th drive of the game that Patrick Mahomes threw a ball 10 yards past line of scrimmage. 5 drives without throwing the ball 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. And he'd only been pressured twice at that point. So I thought it took them a little bit to say, you know what? Offensive line's playing pretty well. Maybe there's a little bit more you could do here. And once they started doing that late in the first half, early in the second half, that's when they started moving the ball.
Defense obviously played well enough to win this game if you get more points. Now they do it without Trent McDuffie. They did it without Trent McDuffie most of the game, Jeff. Like, is this defense capable without McDuffie? Did we see enough in what they did against a Texans team that we said, hey, the offensive line is a problem for the Texans? The defense is going to look better. Get ready. They're going to look better against the Texans than they did against the Cowboys. What do you make of the defense now minus Trent McDuffie moving forward?
I thought they played, phenomenally. Yeah, once Trent McDuffie was out, I was like, okay, this is Nico Collins is going to have like 500 yards receiving. I don't know you saw him blow by McDuffie on that first catch when he got hurt. But I thought they were able to rally. It felt like this was, hey, all bets are off. We're throwing everything at this guy. We have to make things happen. We know their defense is going to be making plays, and their defense was phenomenal too. But yeah, I felt like they really brought it. I felt like Chris Jones was energized. He played as well as he's played all year long. But the one caveat I'll put in there is, like, when they had to get some stops, they weren't getting them. Like C.J. Stroud made a few plays in there that I didn't know he could make. be honest with you, where he was scrambling. That last one where he evaded Chris Jones and found Higgins on the sideline, I was like, where'd that come from? And that's a play Chris Jones has to make. For all the good things he did, that you talk about the kicker epitomizing the season, that play epitomized Chris Jones this year, which is a lot of good things happened before that. And then when you needed to make the play you had to make, he couldn't do it. And so I give him certainly an A- for what I saw, but it would have been an A+ if they had made a few more of those plays.
Where did you see on the defense?
It's amazing how different it looks when Chris Jones is on one. I mean, it's amazing how much better it looks when Chris Jones gets 7 pressures, when his pressure rate is 25%. It hadn't been above 16% in any game all year. He's at 25%, and guess what? The whole defense looks more comfortable. Guess what? Missing Trent McDuffie isn't nearly as big of a deal when you're getting pressure. And 6 of those 7 pressures were quick pressures, just blow up the play types of pressures. It's a reminder of what they've been missing for the first 3 months of the season. And it's like an excuse to mess up somewhere else because that guy is winning so quickly up front.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. We touched on this a little bit, but Rashee Rice has a championship. Kelsey has many, but dropping the football the way they are, I mean, and Kelsey's drops, Jeff, have been amazingly just end up with killer interceptions.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, and handing it to the opposition, as we know, several times this year. I mean, is it just as simple as what we said, that this is a fatigued team? This is a worn out team. This is a team that can't find its focus, or is there something beyond that?
I don't think it's fatigue. I think they're feeling the pressure of these moments in ways they've never had to feel the pressure. And if you look at some of those drops, guys are trying to run with the ball before they have it. I think a lot of those situations, guys are trying to contort their bodies or do things. They're just not bringing it in because they want to do something with it. They feel the need to make something happen. And, I can't dissect every last drop I saw, but certainly with Rashee Rice, it's been 3 games of that. The Denver game, it was happening with him. The Dallas game was happening, now this game. And so, I was giving him all kinds of love when we were talking about the Colts game and what he did in that situation. But now it's like it's back to, well, what is he in these moments? And I think Kelsey's just getting older. And again, I think he wants to do things that he probably can't do anymore. But I feel like this team, you think about it, hasn't had to play in these high leverage, high pressure situations where they don't have the confidence of knowing, okay, we're the ones who are supposed to make these plays. Now it's like up in the air, right? In the past, they always knew someone's going to make a play. We're going to win. We're the champions. We've been here before. And once that's gone, now you're just like everybody else out there trying to make something happen. And so to me, it felt more like panic and desperation in those moments.
I totally agree. I mean, I if you guys recall, like on whether it was Tuesday or Friday, I'd mentioned the fact that the requirement for this team to suddenly make a run would be to do it with their backs against the wall. They haven't performed with their backs against the wall all year. This is indicative of that. It's like, what happens when you get in this game and you're out of the margin for error for the season? How do you respond? They responded the way they've responded all season. I mean, we haven't used this word, I don't think, in this podcast, but that's indicative of choking in the big moments of the game. You look at the sheer impact of those drops. They dropped a 4th down pass. They dropped 2 third down passes that would have been first downs. They dropped another pass that turns into an interception. That's 4 possessions. 2 third downs, a 4th down, and an interception. That's 4 possessions you gave up in a game that was a 1-possession game until a minute left in the game. You just handed over the ball 4 touchdowns. And by the way, that doesn't even include, officially it wasn't a drop when Tyquan Thornton at least could have made a play on that. Great play by Lassiter. But it's still a play that could have been made that's not a drop. On the 6 plays that do count as drops, the EPA combined on those plays is 10.3 points. 10.3 points. Like, however bad the Chiefs played, that's the game. And, like, I don't know how you coach when you scheme the guy open, he gets open, drops the pass. And I think that's got to be one of the most maddening things for the offensive staff, because everything we said, I'm not discounting everything we've said on here, but that's 10.3 points they just gave to the other team by just not holding on to the football when it's thrown right to them.
Yeah, And it's been a regular occurrence throughout the course of the year. So now they set course with the Chargers. Of course, we'll talk about that Friday morning at 10 a.m. with that game. Remember, you can always support the Red, Gold, and Bold by supporting our great sponsors. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, been serving Kansas City since 1994, nationally recognized. Full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, locally owned, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Frontier Justice, Lee Summit, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, Jenks, Oklahoma. They offer firearm retail, a premier indoor shooting range, and training all under one roof. You can learn more by going to frontier-justice.com. For Jeff Chadiha and his cold, for Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold.